Public Authority, Coercion versus Reason by Katie Schlickman, James Toon, and Robert Kupopis. The ICC is an intergovernmental organization intended to use public authority in an attempt at coercion among individuals and signatory states. It should be noted that authority or jurisdiction is only granted to the ICC by consent from each member state. As such, the ICC's authority is more reflective of private authority given by consenting member states. The original intent, however, was that universal authority would be given to the ICC to prosecute war crimes and crimes against humanity, wherever it appears throughout the world, which would reflect a more comprehensive and public authority. The shortfall of the ICC's ability to coerce is the lack of an international enforcement of its judgments. In any case, a domestic police force and military are used as enforcing mechanisms to ensure compliance. On the international stage, the lack of an enforcement body dilutes the effects of the ICC's judgments, at times leading to an appearance of unbalanced attention to certain crimes and regions of the globe. As we look at examples of the ICC utilizing its authority, it is interesting that only leaders from African nations have been convicted and assessed punishment from the ICC. As such, many African nations have complained against an apparent imperialist bias at the ICC, ignoring the crimes of more wealthy and powerful nations. This skew towards the smaller and weaker states is a direct result of the ICC's inability to coerce due to the lack of an international enforcement body. Comparing the WTO to the ICC, we immediately see a difference in effectiveness due to the WTO's ability to enforce its judgments. When complaints are brought before the WTO, the body will hear both sides of the issue and then determine if either party is in violation of any World Trade Organization agreement, if at all. If a violation is deemed to have occurred, the WTO issues a judgment and assesses penalties or permissions to trade partners, which can then enforce their own domestic trade policies to recuperate losses per the WTO judgment. Thus, the WTO is more capable of influencing outcomes by both passing judgments and then providing the means or permissions whereby those judgments can be enforced. As a result, the WTO is a much more coercive international organization. State compliance to ICC judgments is, in essence, a matter of voluntary submission to ICC authority. State compliance to WTO judgments is, on the other hand, enforced at the member state level, making it far easier to enforce judgments to complaints brought before the body. The key difference in these two organizations' ability to exert authority through coercion is the issue of enforcement of the judgments made. The UN is a public authority that has a right to coerce the international community to comply with their charter principles. Their authority, granted by all 193 members, gives them the right to engage in peacekeeping, conflict prevention, mediation, peace enforcement, peace building, and disarming combatants. Different provisions within the UN Charter provide for carrying out their authority via reason or more coercive measures should it prove necessary. The UN has the approval to use force in two situations: self-defense or at the behest of the Security Council. These coercive measures can include interrupting economic relations, the use of armed force, the ability to refer criminals to the ICC. The responsibility to protect stipulates that states have a responsibility to protect their populations from crimes against humanity, and allows for the international community to use peaceful means and, if necessary, coercive measures to protect threatened populations. NATO is a public authority among its 28 members, but among the global community is a private authority. It's committed to a collective defense of all its members. An attack on one is an attack on all. Decisions are made by consensus. In 1998, conflict broke out between ethnically Serbian forces from Yugoslavia, led by Slobodan Milosevic, against the ethnically Albanian Kosovo Liberation Army. This ethnic conflict led to an outbreak of human rights violations and resulted in an outpouring of refugees into neighboring countries like Albania and Macedonia. NATO billed the action as a way to both protect human rights and prevent genocide, as well as a way to prevent destabilizing forces within the region. NATO forces acted without United Nations Security Council approval, knowing China and Russia would veto military action in another sovereign territory. They hadn't acted during other cases of ethnic conflict in the region, like during the Croatian massacre of Serbs in Krajina. Mary Robinson, the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, said that large numbers of civilians have incontestably been killed, and NATO remains the sole judge of what is or is not acceptable to bomb. The airstrike had limited success on military targets, but enjoyed a much greater success in damaging the roads, bridges, and industry of Yugoslavia. Ultimately, the threat of invasion was brought up before Milosevic capitulated to the EU-Russian peace deal. NATO continued bombing for 7 more days before they recognized this deal. Although all these groups, whether they be public or private authorities, would like to use reason primarily to influence other actors, ultimately, the limits of their power rely on their ability or inability